While this officer was asking me that, a second officer joined, third, fourth. So it's like I'm surrounded by 7 officers. Each is asking me different questions. I'm trying to respond to. They told me like I must have and show them that I have $2,000 in cash. No, you cannot show them in your bank account like you have it. You must have it in cash. Walking through that airport, I felt like everyone was just watching me. It's like, you know, there's eyes all over you. I'm like, oh my goodness, it was super uncomfortable. After a very draining experience crossing the border, it's time to finish up our $45 trip, which is going to end up in Paxe. After Paxe, we're going to take a sleeping bus to Vientiane. The total distance for this trip is 1,200 kilometers. I can't believe I did this. It's evening, it's already getting dark, so there's not much to cover on this leg of the journey. So we just alighted and we've come to this company and we've bought our ticket. So this is the sleeping bus to Vientiane. So let's get in and let's see what we have here. Oh, shoes. To remove my shoes. This is a triple-deck sleeping bus, and we're going to take this bus for the remaining 670 kilometers to the capital, Vientiane. One thing I really like about Asia is these sleeping buses, because it's better to sleep through the night than to sit. So, and this is what the beds look like. I was not able to film or show you anything, but this is the first floor and then there's an upper floor. And finally, at about 6:30 in the morning, we made it to Vientiane. So let me give you a glimpse of what Vientiane looks like, and then later on, I'm going to share with you my experience crossing these borders. Well, now let me tell you what happened when I was getting into Cambodia. I wasn't even really planning to talk about this, but getting in and out of Cambodia was just such a pain. And let's start from the time when I was getting in. When I was getting in, I was like the 7th person coming from the plane, and I was the only black person in that plane. So when I got into the airport, first there is this person who was showing us direction. He asked me where I am from, asked for my passport papers, accommodation, flights, all those details that they need. Of course, I showed him. Then he allowed me to proceed. And then when I got and I was just about to get to the immigration counter, I was also singled out again. Everyone was going straight, getting stamped and moving to go collect their baggage. Unfortunately for me, I was stopped, and in no time, I was surrounded by about 7 immigration officers. So the first one came, he asked me where I was going to stay. Of course, I showed him my booking, asked for my flight. Of course, I showed him. I already had a visa, so I also showed him because I applied for the visa online, obviously. While this officer was asking me that, a second officer joined, third, fourth. So it's like I'm surrounded by 7 officers. Each is asking me different questions. I'm trying to respond to this. Like, I had basically everything. But one thing that was quite surprising, they told me like I must have and show them that I have $2,000 in cash. No, you cannot show them in your bank account like you have it. You must have it in cash. And let's go back a little bit. While I was boarding from Thailand, they actually were, I was also sampled out, and they said I was not going to be allowed because I don't have $2,000 in cash. I had some, who works with that such a huge amount? I had some money, and so they had to call, how long are you going to stay in Cambodia? So they said they are not going to allow me to board the plane before the Cambodian immigration accepts that I'm going to be allowed into their country. Of course, I stayed and waited, and I was asking them why me, like why is it that I was the only one who was being told to move aside, yet everyone else was just crossing, and you know, they were going, they'd already gone to the bus that was leading them to the plane. On the other hand, I'm just sitting here, they're making calls and all that. I was like, okay, so will I be allowed to board or not? Eventually, they allowed me to board. Cambodia. Now let's go to the time that I got into Cambodia. So after all these officers around me asked me questions, like I became a person of interest at the airport. Everybody, everyone who was free, because everyone else had already gone through the immigration, so I was the only person remaining being asked all these questions. So the only thing I had to do is to show them, like, I'm a traveler, so I had to show them my 2 other passports. And I think after that, I was just getting tired, and I asked them, what is happening? Like, I mean, you guys have been keeping me here waiting. Everyone else has left. I'm the last person, yet I was among the first people to get out of the plane. Everyone else had already gone, so anyone else who was free, they were all on me. I just felt so uncomfortable, and I asked them, like, is it that you guys are not allowing me into the country? What is the problem? What's the trouble? Of course, they were speaking in their language. I could not tell what they were talking about. But what I did, I just produced my other 2 passports, you know, to just like really do extra confirmation or extra proof that I'm a traveler. So I showed them my 2 other passports. They checked the visas and all that. I don't know what they decided. Eventually they let me go. But also when I go to the counter itself, remember, I'd just been stopped before the counter. Also, when I go to the counter itself, the lady at the counter also called them and asked them if they'd already searched or asked me or something. They said yes, and after that, I was allowed to get into the country. But let me tell you, walking through that airport, I felt like everyone was just watching me. It's like, you know, there's eyes all over you. I'm like, oh my goodness, it was super uncomfortable, to be honest. So this is just to let you know. I don't know if this is something they do to only Kenyans or all Africans. I mean, the first thing they stopped me, even without checking my passport or anything, is because of my complexion. Of course, I'm black, obviously. And I don't know if this is something they do to only Kenyans or all Africans. I would love to know your experience getting into Cambodia. I've interacted with 2 Kenyans who got, you know, they communicated to me on Instagram after I said my experience wasn't good, although I didn't go into the details initially. So they told me they experienced the same. One was about 2 years ago, and one was actually some few months ago, like 2-3 months ago. She also had a similar experience. For her, she was forced to withdraw money at the airport to just prove that she's able to sustain herself in Cambodia. That's quite interesting, because it's quite interesting that sometimes people look at us, black people, they look at our skin color and automatically they assume we are poor. We don't want to stick on anyone's country. We're just traveling. Some of us are just wanderlusters, experiencing, traveling the world, and you know. But the fact that people look at black people, they look at us and assume we're poor, that's very laughable. Even someone who has never left their country or cannot even afford to leave their country is still looking at us as black people, especially Africans, African passports. Automatically, they assume we are poor and we're trying to come look for opportunities in their countries. Does that mean Cambodia is a bad place? To be honest, all the people I met, they were really nice. They were really sweet. All the Cambodians I met, like initially when I was kind of feeling, you know, but the people I interacted with away from the immigration, like they're really amazing. They're so sweet. They're very kind, very helpful people, which is quite surprising. I guess some people, maybe when they have authority or they're in positions of authority, they try to behave in some very funny ways, you know. Well, now let's talk about what happened while I was leaving Cambodia. Of course, we got to the border and I was the only African passport holder. I got stopped and I was asked, where are you from? I said Kenya. They were like, Ghana. I was like, no, Kenya. They were like, Ghana. I told them Kenya is different from Ghana. But he said I would not be allowed, so that was the Cambodia side, so they could not allow, or they could not stamp me out of Cambodia until I walk all the way about 300 to 500 meters to the Lao side to get permission from Lao that I'm actually allowed to get into Lao, and then I come back, they stamp me, and then I go back to Lao to get stamped again. That was like really crazy. I was like, okay, I already have a visa. Of course I had my visa. I'd already applied for my visa from Phnom Penh. I actually like to have my visas in advance, so I even showed them that I have a Lao visa, but they still insisted and they could not stamp me out. They were telling me that on the Lao side there's a board, I don't know, Nigeria, Ghana, they are listed. Of course I could not get in properly, but I remember he mentioned Nigeria and Ghana, and I don't know, maybe they have to go through interviews and something like that before you are allowed into the country, from what he was saying. So I had no option after that long drive on the road, so I had to walk with my bag, very heavy luggage, to the Lao side to ask for permission to be allowed into the country. So I get there, I meet this lady, very nice lady. She smiles at me and she hands me the immigration form. Then I tell her, like, I've been told I need to come for interview or something like that. She looks at it and then she tells me, no, tell them you get in, you get in. Okay, so you see, Lao was okay. She looked at it, at my passport. I already had a visa, so she was okay with it. So the issue was not even on the Lao side. She sent me back again. I had to go back. She told me, go get stamped in Cambodia, stamped out of Cambodia, and then you can come in. So of course I had to walk back again with my bags, very heavy bags. When I get to the Cambodia side and I told them that they've accepted me to get in, they still don't believe it, so they're quite hesitant about it. So they put me waiting on a bench, and then they say they have to call the Lao side. So I don't know, they call the Lao side again, and after that they stamped, and you pay $2 for the stamp, of which I paid, and then eventually I was able to cross the border into the Lao side and filled the form, and finally just got accepted into Lao. Just very easy. So actually for me, I'm like, okay, Cambodia has problem me getting into the country, they also have problem me getting out of the country. Like, it's just crazy. So me sharing this is not to bash Cambodia or anything, but to just inform you what to expect, especially if you have a passport like mine, what to expect, so you don't get too surprised when these things are happening to you when you're trying to get in and out of Cambodia. And I think this is also the reason why we need a lot of people to travel, you know, to travel out there, to at least these people can get to see us, because they're always visiting our countries and in Africa and all that, but we don't get to come to their country. So the only impression they have about us, because they don't see people like me, is that we are poor, and when we come to their countries we're trying to, you know, run away from Africa to seek opportunities elsewhere, which is definitely not the case. What is even more sad is the fact that these kind of challenges and situations, we don't only experience them outside Africa. The fact that at a certain point in Africa, I had to sleep at the border because of these immigration issues is just quite disturbing, you know. And it's really sad. It's really sad that we hate each other even in Africa. We have to do this to each other. We do this to each other in Africa. It's really so sad and frustrating. So everybody hates the African passport, including Africans themselves, because even in Africa, realistically, if you've been following my journey, you know we've had immigration issues. So maybe it's time I start saving up and buy St. Kitts and Nevis passport so I can travel and no discrimination anywhere. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Make sure you hit the like button, share and subscribe, and don't forget to share your experiences below. See you in the next one.